really feel it splattering on your face.
It's literally a bloodbath, yeah.
It's just something that you're not going to get when they say, we'll put it in post.
You have practical blood elements, it's believable, you're not taken out of the story.
I love practical effects. I really like them. And I started my career, if someone was going to fall off a building, you threw someone off a building. It just has a look, you know, it has the smell of real.
All right, hello everybody and welcome back to Buzz Movies. Thank you for the 20 people who watched my first video. Hopefully I can get 21 more to watch part 2 of action horror movies. Now this time we're going to go all the way to the future into the 2000s and bring it up to date from the 1990s, which is what you saw in the first video. But first, I wanted to talk about action horror as a subgenre. But really what makes action horror different than, say, your typical action or your typical horror movie is the protagonist, the relationship between the lead and the monster, the alien, the bad guy, whatever. Usually in horror movies, the bad guy, the monster, is just wailing on the leads, taking them off one by one until the bitter end. Maybe the last one standing or the final girl gets up enough courage to either escape or fight back. That doesn't happen so much in action horror. The lead or leads is battling that monster, that alien, every step of the way. They may not get it right the first few times, but they have the wherewithal, they have the skill, they have the talent to shoot back and ask questions later. The 21st century is really a renaissance for action horror. And it all started back in the UK in the early 2000s with a little movie called Dog Soldiers, which was made on a shoestring budget, but featured some of the most kick-ass action scenes and horror mashups that you've probably never seen. So if you like movies like Black Hawk Down and Battle of Los Angeles, movies that kind of have a smaller military unit feel to them, and you also like werewolves just tearing the hell out of everybody, you might like Dog Soldiers. It follows a band of misfit reservists out in the woods that they're on a training exercise. And they're all pissed off because they're missing their favorite soccer game on TV and they have a lot more better things to do than stomp around the Scottish woodland. And who can blame them?
The most important football match of my life is playing tonight, and I'm stuck up the backside of beyond without so much as a six-pack or a telly.
Well, that's the army for you.
Hey, it's England v Germany, man. Full-on footy war.
Yeah, well, it's nothing like this at all then, is it, Joe?
It's just an exercise. Hardly life or death.
There they meet up with some special operators who are kind of cagey with them, and they try to figure out the mystery as they come upon mangled corpses and animals out in the wilderness. Eventually, the werewolves do indeed catch up with them, as long as with the betrayal, which really stings the most. They eventually end up in a very spooky house, a la Evil Dead 2 and any of the famous horror tropes you've come to know and love. And they have to shoot their way out to a car, which is left in the garage. But it really adds in a lot of great shootout scenes and drama, and really it's a character-driven movie, despite the slashing and throat ripping. So we're going to bring it back stateside and talk about Legion 2010, a few years after Dog Soldiers. And Legion is very much related to an earlier film I talked about, From Dusk Till Dawn, in terms of tone and just overall craziness.
I said your fucking baby's gonna burn.
Go to hell, Amy.
Paul Bettany plays the angel Michael, who takes it upon himself to save mankind from God's wrath.
Baby.
He tracks down the mother of an unborn child who's actually the savior of mankind, but no one else knows it yet, not even her. But basically, God sends his forces against her in this small, dusty truck stop in the middle of nowhere, and just sends barrage and wave after wave of demons and all sorts of nasties that want to take her out and basically destroy all of mankind. What a great thing for God to do. God is the bad guy in this movie, which is interesting. We are confronted with a wall-crawling granny ice cream truck man from hell, and just various types of demons. Like I said, it's very similar to From Dusk Till Dawn, with the variety, the inventiveness, the attacks, flamethrower that shoots a good 100, 300 feet. Always a crowd pleaser when you break out that flamethrower. Just take off your film critic hat, all right? Just relax and have yourself a good demon squash and good time with this one.
Hold on. I don't think that's such a good idea.
Dad, I can handle it.
He can handle it.
He doesn't have a choice.
And now we're going to dig up the Universal Soldier franchise. You might remember, of course, you all remember this classic action movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren.
Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's see if it still works.
Stop it! Stop it!
Are you ready? It's memory clearance time.
Going back and watching it again, Universal Soldier, the original movie, did have horror elements woven into it, into its fabric. And you definitely see that in the opening scene and towards the end, having a bit of a zombie motif as well in the narrative structure. Starting in 2009, a director by the name of John Hyams picked up the franchise and moved it into a completely different direction and made it truly an action horror franchise. Now this installment picks up Scott Adkins, who we all know and love, being one of the better B-movie action stars to come out in the last really 20, 30 years. He's on board as the lead in this one. He really showcases his acting skills, and that's no joke. He does a great job of being a tortured, confused individual, similar to Memento, the lead in that as well, where he kind of loses his past, and he's attacked, or he thinks he's being attacked by Luke Devereaux, which is Jean-Claude's character. And he's kind of on this path to seek out revenge because he believes that his family was totally wiped out and brutally murdered. Again, it starts off with family murders. I mean, this thing really, really goes for it. So he's on this path. Luke Devereaux and Sergeant Scott, which is Dolph Lundgren's character, they, kudos to them. They're back together again, but on friendlier terms not trying to kill each other, but they are visiting every brothel and just every liquor store along the way, because Unisouls have been reduced to just the bare basics of man, basically cavemen that want nothing else than to satisfy their urges and fight, and that's what they've been reduced to. So there's a lot of meta commentary going on, which you would not expect with a direct-to-video release like this, but it's all in there. So Scott Adkins is after Luke Devereaux and his band of motley Unisouls are still hiding out, and there's some kind of a cult involving Sergeant Scott. He's keeping them all together and the morale up. And along the way, he kind of finds out a little bit more about his past. I'm not going to get into spoilers at this point, but being a Universal Soldier movie with a lot of themes of memory and what it means to be human, you can kind of see where this one might be going. So really, if you want a more cerebral, and I just funny to hear those words, a cerebral Universal Soldier sequel at this late stage in 2012, please do yourself a favor and pick this one up. There's a double feature featuring the 2009 sequel as well, available on Amazon right now. Pretty cheap too, so go out and find it. All right, now we're going to get more into modern times, which movies that you should all remember and hopefully have seen by now. I'm going to start with Upgrade, 2018. 2018, by the way, just going a little sidetrack, was an excellent year for movies. Really not, maybe not Oscar caliber type of stuff, but I'm talking about entertainment value. So Upgrade's included in that. The next movie I'm going to talk about, Mandy, was made during that year. Spider-Man, the animated Spider-Man movie that came out was great. Black Klansman and Annihilation. Struggled with putting Annihilation on the list, but it's more of a cosmic horror movie, although the female leads are all badasses and armed to the teeth and can fight back, so it technically meets my definition, but wanted to hit on some of these other ones. Buster Scruggs, The Meg, Creed 2, Overlord. Again, more of a war movie mashed up with a horror. Definitely check that out. The Mule, Den of Thieves, Peppermint, another outstanding action movie. And The Standoff at Sparrow Creek, which is more of an independent feature and suspense thriller, but I also recommend that one for action fans as well. So 2018 was really where it's at. But Upgrade kind of set the tone. Again, very gritty with an expressionist type of lighting, and cool things happen with the filmmaking style.
I can't do it.
The lead character is technologically adverse, and he likes working on old cars, which kind of plays into the theme of the movie. But it's set in the near future where technology really has taken over almost every facet of life, including, of course, the self-driving cars, which we all know is in the future at some point, which we've been promised for the last 30 years. Never happens.
You have to take over. It's up to you now.
Okay, buckle up.
So he and his wife were ambushed alongside the road one day, and these thugs murder the wife and leave him as a quadriplegic. And he has to simultaneously deal with that horrible grief and learn how to function as a severely disabled individual. And, It gets very dark at times. He tries to commit suicide. And it all looks like it's totally lost until a savvy tech guru who's the equivalent of a Zuckerberg.
What if I told you I could offer you something that would enable you to walk again? That computer chip that I showed you, it has the potential to change everything for people in your condition.
So he gets a chip implanted in the base of his neck called STEM, and he eventually finds out that STEM is an AI that can speak to him as well as control his body. So not only is he able to walk, but he's able to do things at a superhuman machine-like level, which produces some of the most kick-ass fight scenes, hand-to-hand combat.
Relax.
Look, man, stay down, please. Please don't get up.
Yeah, you remember that scene. It was in all the trailers. But throughout, there are a lot of wonderful action scenes like that, and just some brutal gore practical effects involved as well. So really, I mean, it mixes. This is why people had such a problem with it, I think. It mixes some of those very emotional scenes and character-driven narrative. Mixes that with a guy that looks like Kip from Napoleon Dynamite, who had the shotgun grafted into his arm and is chasing after him through the streets like a typical 80s or 90s action movie. So I don't think people really knew what to make of this film.
How long do they VR for?
Days. Weeks.
Do they sleep?
Nope.
Why someone would choose to live in a fake world I will never understand.
The fake world is a lot less painful than the real one.
It works for fans like us. You know, that's pretty much who it was made for. So it's got sci-fi, it's got action, it's got a thriller mystery vibe to it, and it has some horror. It's got some horror elements in there, and really what it means to be a human in our advanced technological era. Some of this crap, like I mentioned in my other video, you can get it on DVD. You can get it out the bargain bin. It's not going to make a whole bit of difference in your level of enjoyment. But movies like Upgrade and Mandy, which I'll talk about next, definitely deserve a Blu-ray watch because of the color palettes used and the lighting and filmmaking style. So definitely recommend. All right, so I alluded to it. Let's talk about Mandy. Mandy, oh Lord, where do you start with this one?
And he talked to me. Addressing me as a friend. He said, Jeremiah, they were wrong. And you are right. So right. And he blessed me with his holy kiss.
This kind of solidified the Nick Cage freak out style of movie, but really it's more than that. It goes a little bit beyond what we've seen Nick Cage do in the past couple of years as far as direct TV or indie type of films out there. And that's mostly due to the director, Panos Cosmatos. Do you recognize Cosmatos by any chance? For all you action film buffs. Well, Panos' father is George Cosmatos, and that guy was responsible for
a murder every 24 minutes.
Cobra kind of launched action horror into a new generation. With his son, a lot of slasher elements in Cobra. There's an evil cult and all those classic 80s horror elements in there as well. So Panos kind of took the baton from Daddy and made this film, which is a follow-up from a previous film, Somewhere Over the Dark Rainbow God, or whatever it was called. It was a trip, and he only pushed it further with Mandy.
I'm tired today. Have you had any headaches?
The colors in Mandy are almost hard to watch at times. It's even harder to watch than the action and the gore. Just very severe, washed out color palette. It's used two ways. The color is used when there's any sort of drugs involved. Characters get drugged up and abused, and also losing one's mind. It's kind of illustrative in those crazy magenta purples and blues, and that's the kind of color palette I'm illustrating here right now. So it's an influential movie, but really what you tune in for is the action horror elements, right? I mean, not only do we have a crazy cult that abducts Nick Cage and his wife Mandy, the titular Mandy. Don't you hate when all these reviewers say titular? It sounds kind of dirty and annoying. Mandy ends up in a sleeping bag and is burned alive in front of her husband Nick Cage. Now, this kind of sets the whole production into fifth gear. So from there, Nick Cage does what any grieving husband would do. He fashions his own axe, which is the baddest thing since the Night Stalker's knife and Cobra, to be honest. And he just goes on a rampage. Now, the ace in the hole in this whole thing, which really didn't come out in any of the promotional materials that I'm aware of, is that not only the cult leader, which set this whole thing in motion, not only is he after him, but there's these drugged up biker mutants. I'm not quite sure what they are. They're presented as like monsters, but they've had such pure acid for so long that they've just turned into beasts, or I really don't know what they are, but they are cool. Nick Cage starts rolling and slashing his way through this gang on his way to the cult leader, which ends up in a crazy, trippy battle that you need something to be drinking on by the time you get to that, or trip it out of your mind. You might have been scared away because of how indie it is or whatever stereotypes you have in that type of genre, but really, for action horror movie fans, this one's for you.
Oh, it's you. It's been a while.
Come for the Reaper.
All right, last up. Again, a movie maybe some of you haven't seen yet, but definitely need to. A little movie called VFW, which came out in 2019. Fangoria, noted horror zine, produced this one. And it features just an outstanding cast. I mean, that was the main selling point when I saw this being advertised out there.
You all right? Yeah, hey. Appreciate it, Walter. Really appreciate it.
Norman's there too, and he has a beer at the old watering hole, the VFW watering hole, and this is where the entire movie takes place. Very similar to the classic Night of the Living Dead zombie trope, so it does play out in that way. And the zombies in this one, just like in Mandy, are drug-addled addicts who are not really quite human anymore, and they're just after the goods, and they're easily controlled by their drug lord and whatever cult leader. He looks like one of those 80s or 90s villains from back in the day. A lot of Escape from New York vibes as well. But he sends his druggies out to capture this girl who took his stash and killed her sister or a friend. Look, do we need to go through the plot? I mean, really, the only reason we're tuning in, again, is for those great action scenes filled with gore, practical effects, and blunt objects. They use everything at their disposal, these old guys, from axes and weapons, anything they can find to just beat the living tar out of these zombie drug addict a-holes to great effect. Now, this movie may not be the most easy on the eyes versus the more polished works of Upgrade and even Mandy. A lot of gray, a lot of grit, a lot of red and blue lights going on there. The action and the gore is inventive. And it's fun to watch. Something a little bit nostalgic with actors that we've all grown up with, at least in the action community. So, give VFW a chance.
Oh, shit. Right. I got the one on the left.
So again, find these movies where you can. They're a little easier to come by than the 90s ones I talked about, mostly because they're just, they're just recent. They're a little bit more popular than, say, Full Eclipse. So anyway, that was my roundup for action horror. From the 1990s to 2000s. Again, the real push began in the 80s with Predator, Cobra, even RoboCop kind of had those elements. Catapulted into the 90s with some great entries in there that are seldom seen, and then really ramped up into the 2000s. And I hope to see more of this at the theater. Well, maybe not the theater. What am I talking about? I'd like to see these made in any way possible and hopefully streamed, so we can all enjoy them in the comforts of our own home, right? We tried it with Willy's Wonderland. That was a complete disaster as far as filmmaking goes. Entertaining, maybe, but there's just no there. It's one of those movies that's just like, okay, it's Nick Cage beating up on animatronics, and he plays pinball and nothing affects any sort of character or narrative. It's just like, cool, man. Turn off your brain. Now, I know I'd say turn off your brain for things like Legion, but still hung on a narrative, in a story that made sense to somebody. It may be dumb, but at least it is a structure. There's a story there. Mandy has a story, as out there as that movie is. What's Willy's Wonderland other than exactly what I said? Doesn't work. So not on my list. You can put on your list at home. Whatever. If you like that sort of thing. Anyway, so thanks for watching and breaking these down. I hope to have more of these type of videos where we kind of talk about hidden gems and some genre mashups, because that's kind of my thing. I'm an action movie fan, but I like it when they kind of stretch the genre and go into different areas like that. I love genre movies, exploitation, that sort of thing. So we'll touch on more of those coming up in the near future. So thanks for watching, and subscribe and all that shit. Whatever. If you want to subscribe, fine. I don't care. I'm not really doing this to be monetized, okay? I'm not. I just want to share the love of, type of movies that I want to see made more often, and that's really what it's all about. So leave comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback and see what you all are watching in line with what we're talking about. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
You're ripping people's faces off and heads are exploding.
I found Joe Begos astoundingly savage. When the blood starts to fly, he gets really silent.